Welcome back to part 2 of my Tenured at Berkeley series. Today I want to discuss the first of 3 areas of evaluation for promotion, and that is service. I will give my reflections on how much service I did, and then I'll put those activities into the context of what most people may do as an assistant professor. First, I'll discuss 4 categories that I use in my CV to organize my service activities. The first is professional service. So, professional service is done for technical organizations, and conference service also is included in your professional service activities. On my CV, I actually have a separate section for conference activity, but it is considered professional service. Specifically, some examples of my own professional service include serving on the Representation and Equity Affairs Committee for the American Association for Aerosol Research for 3 years, so 2020 to 2023. Editorial roles count as professional service. Personally, I am on the early career board for a new journal, ES&T Air, and I was also the lead guest editor for a focus issue in Environmental Research Letters on the intersection of environmental engineering and community engagement. Of course, reviewing papers as a peer reviewer is professional service. And also, my testimony at a hearing for the U.S. Democratic Natural Resources Committee for the Environmental Justice for All Act is listed as professional service in my CV. Next is department service. So, as an assistant professor, there's actually a lot of things we can do to get service credit at the department level. Usually, these activities should be a low lift. They should not take a lot of time away from your research. So, some examples generically of department service that could be a low lift includes assisting with graduate admissions. Okay, so undergraduate admissions is actually handled at the campus level, or administering the graduate comprehensive exam or the exit exam for first year students. You could organize the activities for graduate visit day, which usually happens in the spring quarter or spring semester, or serving on any number of department committees that may meet once a week, once a month, etc. Personally, my department service activities before tenure included serving on an undergraduate curriculum task force for 1 semester. I served on a faculty search committee for a year. I was also on the undergraduate/ABET committee at UC Riverside for a year. And I served on the strategic planning committee for the civil and environmental engineering department at UC Berkeley for 3 semesters. So sometimes these activities are seen as a conflict of your time, particularly while you're trying to build your lab. And this can be true. But it's also useful to get some firsthand training on how your program and your department works and how it functions. Because fortunately or unfortunately, in a few short years, you'll be leading those activities. So, third, service at the college or campus level. I lump these together because in my mind, at the assistant professor level, they are both a little bit out of reach. In my experience, assistant professors are not encouraged to do these activities. I personally don't recommend it because at the junior faculty stage, you really should be focused on building your research and teaching reputation, building that reputation locally at your department level. This also ensures that you are not getting pulled into any campus or college politics that could jeopardize your tenure. So, participating in highly political or bureaucratic activities before you have security of employment, I don't recommend it. However, some examples of fairly benign service activities that you can do at the college and campus levels that helps you build a positive reputation are the following. So I was invited to speak multiple times at the UC Riverside and the UC Berkeley College of Engineering Advisory Board meetings. These are short research presentations that give the advisory board an idea of the breadth and depth of research being conducted in those colleges. I also moderated a YouTube panel for the Berkeley Lights the Way program. I'll add a card to this. And I also participated in the UC Berkeley College of Engineering homecoming presentation to the family and friends event. So those are relatively benign service activities that get you in front of college leadership, but don't necessarily embroil you in any college drama. Lastly, there is public and community service. So I find this category to be quite fulfilling, and it's important to list these on your CVs because sometimes it's counted as hidden service. These types of requests came in quite frequently for me because I worked closely with community organizations when I was an assistant professor. And usually these activities have non-research themes. There is some gray area with public and community service because sometimes a non-academic institution will request participation and representation to fill the role of academic expertise. And so you can judge whether or not this becomes a professional service activity or whether it remains public and community service. So some examples of my public community service includes serving on panels at local churches, sororities, and giving presentations for the Union of Concerned Scientists. Also, the activities that I list in this section of my CV are usually not associated with an academic or a research organization. So I hope that helps to distinguish the different forms of service that you can possibly participate in as a junior faculty member. Now I'll go a little bit under the hood to discuss how my service was actually reviewed at various levels of evaluation. So just as a reminder, I went through the stages of tenure evaluation in part 1. I'll add a card to this. So first, at my mid-career evaluation, so that's midway between hire and tenure at the end of year 4, the advice around service that I received from the campus level was to overall reduce my service activities because I was doing a disproportionately high amount of service relative to my career stage, and also it was viewed as taking away time for research activities. Before this campus mandate, I really just felt like I couldn't say no to different requests because I was afraid I was going to be viewed as someone that's not a team player. And this is way more likely to occur if you're a woman of color in academia. And with that said, I put on the screen a screenshot of an essay I've discussed on this channel before from Dr. Joanne Trejo about the burden of service on faculty of color. And she provides evidence of undue burden of service on underrepresented faculty to meet the DEI needs of an institution. And so even though this is no longer a national priority, this phenomenon can and still will manifest by passing along either DEI related service or even undesirable service work to underrepresented faculty. So getting back to my review, my external reviewers, so the people that are writing tenure letters, they remarked at the high level of service I was doing. The campus reviewers, thankfully, they took note that I actually followed their advice and I pivoted away from service and more toward research. This was a good thing because, as a caveat, no matter what you think about your mid-career evaluation, no matter what your personal goals are, it is critical that we follow the advice that is given in our mid-career evaluation. They want to see that the advice was taken and that you've been successful in meeting the tenure goals. So when you are evaluated at tenure, they'll check the box and say that the expectations of the campus were met. So I'll end this video with some personal advice about service for early career faculty. And I want faculty with underrepresented identities to particularly pay attention to these. So first, if you're going to say yes to the role, be sure that you're saying yes to a role that brings you joy and fulfillment. This is going to make the service go by faster and be more enjoyable, and you'll feel less guilty about taking time away from research. So, for example, if you like working with students, then say yes to service roles that are related to like club or student organization advisement, or you can be an undergraduate or graduate advisor for students outside of your lab. If you're passionate about recruitment, then perhaps serve on an admissions committee. I personally like ideation. I like thinking about the future and implementing fun solutions. So, strategic planning and marketing are the roles that I tend to gravitate towards. So, next, you'll want to start thinking about whether or not you are on track in the future once you get tenure, once you become a full professor. If you're on track for leading a large research center or being a college administrator, or if you're destined for the academic slash entrepreneur route. So, identifying these longer term roles will also help inform the service roles that you take at a junior faculty level. For instance, if you want to be the president of your technical organization one day, it's probably best that you lean toward more professional service roles like conference organizing and serving on those committees. If you want someday to be the vice provost for graduate affairs, you'll probably want to serve on graduate studies committees, admissions committees, and serving at the college and campus levels and Senate faculty levels for committees related to graduate student success. Always, as a caveat, please consult a trusted mentor on how to chart these service trajectories and how to match them with your goals, and then decide whether or not or when these service roles are best for you to take on before you get tenure. Last but not least, if you're going to do service as a junior faculty member, please try to do a decent job. I know people will try to tell you to half-ass the role, but that is truly a pet peeve of mine. And in my experience, half-assing the job gives you a reputation that follows you as you go along in your career. So people say that service doesn't matter and you can give it the bare minimum, but people will remember how they had to pick up your slack while they served with you on those committees, and they probably won't want to work with you in any capacity after that experience. So always remember that you are actively building a reputation for your work ethic, your determination, your stamina in most of the roles, if not all, that you participate in before tenure. Thank you for sticking through part 2, Service Reflections. I hope that this video was informative, and stay tuned for part 3.